No, that's okay. Didn't know how long you were going to be, otherwise we'd maybe wait. Have you really? Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's got to be really exciting about, like, especially depending on what it's about. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jenny. Well, I would like to call to order the regularly scheduled City Council meeting for the City of Nisswa. It is December 20th, 2017. It is 7 p.m. Would you all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So the first item on the agenda, and Jenny, did you want to do the proposed budget right away? Is that the intent? You'd like to start out with that?
The budget and the levy are under new business.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that with you. So, item B on the agenda this evening is the consent calendar, which consists of the police report, planning and zoning report, public works report, park and rec report, the Spirits of Nisswa report, fire chief report, personnel updates, and presentation of claims for the month of December. Is there a motion
Mr. Mayor, there's an add-on on number 9, the transfer of funds from the liquor funds to the general fund.
Updated agenda on top of the papers in front.
Okay. And also the transfer of $235 from the liquor funds to the general fund as...
$235,000.
Did I stop short on that one?
$635.
Okay. Well, let's add some more to that then. Or Jenny might not be able to pay the bills. Transfer of $235,000 from the liquor funds to the general fund. So, Don, your motion then includes all 9?
Yes.
Okay, Ross, all 9? Did you
I'll
second?
second. I didn't second it.
John seconded it. Very good. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item C on the agenda this evening is open forum. Is there anyone here this evening who would like to speak about an issue that is not on the agenda tonight? Okay. Please come up to the podium, state your name for the record, please, even though I will recognize faces.
Is it on now?
Yes.
My name's Dwayne Blank. Many of you know who I am, and also with me is Jason Martinson. I'm here tonight representing the rummage sale ministry of the Lutheran Church of the Cross. Jason happens to be the chairman of the property committee for the church. As many of you may be aware, our rummage sale is kind of a hallmark of Nisswa in some respects, and it has been undertaken by the church for over 50 years, but in the last 10 years or so it has grown to be almost legendary. In fact, we now have people, groups of women who schedule a weekend trip to Nisswa just to attend our rummage sale in the spring and the fall. To give you an indication how it has grown in the last 10 years, we have donated over $300,000 to various missions, ministries, and charities. 25% of that $300,000 has gone to state and community charities and ministries, such as the food shelf here locally, Kids Against Hunger, Beyond the Yellow Ribbon that the Legion sponsors. We even support the St. Paul St. Vincent de Paul ministry at St. Christopher's Church. So because some of the gals from the St. Christopher's Church or Catholic Church helps out over at the Lutheran Church. At any rate, as we have grown, we were able to get by on a short-term basis from 2 weeks to maybe 2 or 3 months with temporary storage containers. And we put those in the parking lot at the church. However, we have come to the conclusion for a couple of good reasons. One is the person who had the container business was a member of the church and used to donate those, but now we are forced to renting them. And the economics of it are that we would be better off to have somewhat permanent storage. And so we are in a phase of looking at a permanent structure on the church property. But in the interim, we need to install a couple of temporary storage containers. We've submitted an application for a conditional use permit to place 2 containers on a permanent but interim basis of perhaps 3 to 5 years, and then a third one during each sale on a rental or temporary basis of perhaps a couple of weeks. Much to our surprise, we learned when I turned in the application to the Planning and Zoning Administrator, there's a $300 fee associated with that. So the reason that we're here is to request a waivering of that fee or a reduction in that fee. The Planning and Zoning Administrator suggested that may be possible, and so we're here to make our case as such for the council to consider waiving that fee or at least allowing a reduced fee. We have had containers on the property the last 3 years, I think it has been, on a short-term basis, and at that time when I checked in with the Planning and Zoning Administrator, due to the short-term nature of having them on site, he didn't consider it was necessary to have any special permit or anything at that time. But as I just said, we've come to the conclusion we really need them as somewhat permanent storage, and we are proposing this plan at this point of a couple of temporary units or storage units until we can put a plan together and raise enough funds to build a more permanent structure on the church property. So I would entertain any questions you might have. It's obviously an economic issue for us in terms of minimizing our expenses so that we can continue to donate and contribute to various ministries and charities within the community. I might add that our rummage sale has really become kind of a community recycling event. It's not only folks from our congregation or church that contribute or donate items, but the whole community does in one way or another.
Well, I would like to make a motion, hearing no other. Do you have some discussion, Don?
Well, this is the first time I've heard it. It hasn't come before the Planning Commission. You can do whatever you want, but I would just caution you, once you make exceptions, what do you do when the next nonprofit comes along and the nonprofit after that? It's just kind of a slippery slope to some degree. Not that I'm against it. In fact, I go to the garage sale myself. I'm just saying that there are other things to look at besides just right off the top of your head. We should be uniform in what we do. That's all.
Well, a question that I would have, and this is maybe for Mr. Pearson, and that is, each of these scenarios need to stand on their own merits, correct? Or if there's a variance given, or not necessarily a variance, but an exception made, does that really set a precedent for the future, or does each individual, can't think of the word, but situation have to stand on its own merit?
I think every situation, Mayor, stands on its own merit. Precedent gets misused sometimes in these contexts. Precedent, what I'm used to applying precedent to is it determines the later decision. And so I don't know that any situation like this where you'd grant this, that you'd be committed to doing that forevermore for all. But that is a common theme in these sorts of situations with councils, where they look at decisions they make like this, and as Don said, making sure that you treat situations uniformly. So precedential, are you bound? No, but it's a consideration.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
If you're going to allow no fee, I would suggest that the paperwork still go through the planning and zoning. There may be some conditions on the permit, the things they need to do that don't have a monetary value.
Very good. Before I move forward with it, one question that I do have, Dwayne and Jason, and that is, as this rummage sale grows, which is a wonderful thing, it's a blessing. Traffic gets to be a little bit more of an issue every year, and I'm not here to complain about that by any stretch, but there may be a point in time where there may need to be some discussion as to how to manage that better, possibly. I know, like, for example, this year, they were parked on both sides of the county road, which isn't, I'm not complaining about any of this, just laying out what it is. Sportland's parking lot was full, which, if that property in the future sells and it's a business, then that's going to change availability for that parking space. So I could see, where we may need to ask the church to address the parking in the future. I mean, I don't want to I'm not making a big deal out of it.
No, but I
if there
could
is
speak
any
to
issue
that.
there, that could be one that.
We own the property immediately east of the parking lot and where the garage and the containers would be located. And unfortunately, the last two sales, that property or lot where we considered using for parking has had a couple of large piles of debris from storm damage. That's cleaned up now with the exception of a small pile. So by spring, we have talked about designating some parking over on that property, which would relieve that parking on both sides of the county road in particular, and help alleviate some of that concern. So we have talked about that, and we recognize that that's a growing problem as well as storage for us.
And it's a good problem to have. There's no doubt about that.
In some respects it is.
Yeah.
There's no question about that.
I'll make a motion that the city council waives the $300. I take into consideration Don's comments, but if them are directed to the council and everyone stands on their own merit, and I don't think we're going to have a huge influx of this anyways, but it's a community event, it's a church. I'll make a motion that we waive the fee.
I'll second that. Discussion?
The paperwork still goes through planning and zoning, though?
Yes.
Yeah.
That they'll still have to, you guys will still have to, which you're already in the process of going through planning and zoning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So, just discussion-wise, the caution of the parking, which we've talked about, and I'm sure you guys, as you've said, you're very aware of, and to do which you have done a great job of keeping it looking neat and tidy around there, but just continue to do a nice job of keeping it tidy, which the storage units are obviously going to help.
Just a point
Jason?
to make, Mr. Mayor, that this would be the proper channel of submitting that application through the P&Z administrator, not the full P&Z commission. It's an over-the-counter
No.
application.
No, I disagree. I believe the Planning and Zoning Administrator said it would follow the process of going to the Planning Commission.
Right.
Desmond, anything you'd like to share to how the process might work from your perspective? For the, if you'd come up here and, just so that we're all clear on how you see the process for the church.
Yes. Desmond McGill, the City of Nisswa Planning Administrator. Basically, we would just go through the process as any other application for a conditional use permit. We'd notify the surrounding property owners within 300 feet of the property. I talked with this applicant yesterday about perhaps approaching the council on the fee, as I don't have that authority to waive any fees for the city. So, but it would go through a normal process. I believe that's all they're asking for tonight is the fee waiver.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would add, we have not had any complaints at all from neighbors or the community with storage units on site in the past couple of years. And where we're proposing to locate them, as we indicated on the site plan with the application, is immediately adjacent to the dumpster enclosure. So they're kind of back to the corner of the property, and the crossroads units that are closest are the garage door entrances, so folks aren't looking out their window at more buildings.
Sure. Thank you, Dwayne. So, I mean, just kind of tie that together, what the city council is looking to do tonight is to waive the fee. And, we brought up a couple mentions, I wouldn't even want to call them concerns, but mentions. Desmond has heard those. Don's he's a liaison for planning and zoning. They both heard that, so they can, they know what has been brought up, and they can look to do what planning and zoning does with that. And so if we approve this, then the fee is waived, but the remainder of the process stays the same.
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Thank you very
Motion
much.
carries. Thank you for that great charity project that the church has. Anyone else for open forum this evening? Hearing none, we will move on to reports. City Administrator report, when you're ready, Jenny.
Thank you very much. Good evening, City Council. The first item I have, item D1A, is a recommendation to remove Desmond McGill from probationary status to permanent employee. Desmond, his 6-month probationary period was complete on December 5th and received satisfactory remarks from our planning and zoning liaison and myself as well, and we are happy to have him on our team and recommend that he is removed off of probationary status.
I would make that motion that we remove Desmond from the probationary status to a permanent employee.
Second.
Okay. Discussion? As I've shared with Jenny and with Desmond, I feel that we are truly blessed to have Desmond as our planning and zoning administrator, and personally I'm thrilled with what he's been doing for the city and the way he's been handling things, so thank you. Anyone else? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item I have is a recommendation from Police Chief Craig Taylor to remove Officer Jeremy Rooney from probationary status to permanent employee. Jeremy's 1-year anniversary was November 21st and has successfully completed his probation, and we're looking for that recommendation as well.
I'll make the motion to recommend to remove Jeremy Rooney from probationary status to permanent employee status.
I'll second that.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item I have is a recommendation to approve the 2018 salary and benefit adjustments for city staff as outlined in the memo in your packet.
I'll make the motion to approve the recommendation for 2018 salary and benefit adjustments for city staff that Jenny has presented in this packet dated December 20th, 2017. I don't know if I need to put in that we're still negotiating the contract, or if that's listed here, so I should make that clear. So I'll leave it at I'll leave my motion at just approving what Jenny is recommending for us.
I'll second that.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item D1D is a recommendation from Fire Chief Sean Bailey and myself to approve the fire department officer pay as presented. Sean Bailey has requested a small increase to the officer pay. That has been a few years since that has been looked at, and this is his recommendation. His own personal pay is a part of the union supervisor contract that will be finalized soon, but for the rest of them, this is his recommendation.
I'd move the resolution as presented by the administrator on the issue of the fire department officer pay.
I'll second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Great, thank you. The next item I have tonight is a liquor license ownership change request for Holiday Station Stores. Basically, Holiday is undergoing ownership change and a little bit of restructuring. There is no change to the local Holiday itself. The manager's employees are going to be the same, but because of the name change, we have to go through the process of formally reissuing the license. So the current license would end and the new one would take its place.
Mr. Mayor, I believe that we have an error on the application. The license period listed from 12/22 of this year, which is correct, but 2/6/30 of 2017, that's June of,
Should be
Yes.
18, yes.
should be 2018, not
Yes.
2017.
Thank you. We'll make that correction.
I'd make the motion to accept the change.
I'll second that. And this is a 3-2 license, correct?
Yes, 3-2 off sale.
Yep. Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The last item I have tonight for the council is to set the City of Nisswa organizational meeting date for January as we are upcoming the new year. We should set a date to establish council liaisons, official financial institutions, newspapers, that kind of thing. Last year, it was the first Wednesday in January, I believe, which would be the 3rd, but I'm looking to the council to see if we can set a date, or I can follow up another time as well.
Thoughts? I mean, I'd be fine with the 3rd myself.
That's a Wednesday evening.
Does that
Yeah,
work for
that's fine.
Ross?
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
7 o'clock?
7
7
PM,
o'clock?
January 3rd,
Okay,
for our organizational meeting.
great. Thank you very much. And I don't have any other updates for the council. We have a full agenda tonight, so that is the end of my report.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Next is the city attorney, Mr. Tom Pearson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Nothing to report other than I was asked to review the comprehensive plan draft. I did do that. I don't have any remarks or comments or anything for revision on that. So So nothing else to report. If there are questions, I know there's some old business stuff coming up later on the agenda that I'll be involved in, but I've got nothing apart from that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the city attorney? Okay. Next is the city engineer, Mark Hallen.
Good evening. Just for your information, actually after our meeting last week, on Thursday of last week, Crow Wing County came out with a request for proposal from consultants around the state to do a traffic study and actually design 4 counties, 3 and 77 intersection of Highway 271. So, and they actually in their proposal under phase 2, the consultant must work with the city of Nisswa meetings, and gathering information as they will also work with MnDOT, and looking at options and plans for that intersection. So that is something that when Steve Stroshine was here in October, he talked about 2021. Now they're actually starting now, and the RPO lines construction in the year 2019. So that is something that's coming up, and I made city staff aware of it last Thursday when it came out, and we'll continue to coordinate with the county as they make their selection of a consultant, and then get into their phase. Well, the city will be involved with phase 1 utilities, because you have utilities, sanitary sewer in the area, and then the phase 2 for backage and other roads. So that, and then I know that the city is also talking about maybe forming a committee to look at 77 down in Coma. So one thing this RFP does, they will be updating on traffic information, and they do actually in the RFP for emails you've sent them recognize that there is some future development being considered at Grandview. So this study must take that into account also.
Okay.
All right. I don't know if you have any questions on that, or just for your information. It was kind of timely that it came out last Thursday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last week.
It's probably actually, it may end up being beneficial that it was moved up somewhat with the fact that there's going to be some discussions happening with County Road 77 at the entrance of Grandview Lodge, so that could be actually a positive.
And I did make a note to myself, kind of, as I do that study, we remind them of the Church of the Cross rummage sale that is a traffic generator, and their ex-county engineer might want to give you some information on that. So, and this is just a total side item. This is really more for Peter. This morning when I stopped and got my coffee at the Holiday gas station, they have moved their ice chests and moving rentals totally out the front, which is a condition of their conditional use permit for that. So just for your information, but we're curious. I don't know if they were actually asked to do that, but they are reminded that they did do it. So it's nice to see when a local business follows up on what they say they're going to do.
And I believe they turned off some of their blue lights too. Did
I
they?
don't know about that, but I just, they did. They followed up, and it was a very nice addition, and also what the planning commission asked them to change, they changed.
That's great.
Just for your information. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Mark. I do have a question, though, regarding, and this is kind of for you and for Tom Blommer. The committee to discuss Grandview, the streets and the concerns of the neighbors on West Linden is kind of 2 pieces. First of all, there's work that's going to be done, work that could be done and is looking to be done on County Road 77. That involves the county and whatever parties. There's also the piece of what does the city do from where the county road easement ends all the way down through Grandview and West Linden and any other portion that may come under discussion. With this getting moved up with the county a little bit, I don't know how that will necessarily, or if it will even impact the current discussions, but is there a need to, I had expressed that I was thinking the timetable for that committee would be to start in about May when the residents get back. It was brought up that maybe that's too late. So is there any thoughts right now, or is this something we should talk about in the next couple weeks about the time frame for that committee? I was really hoping that the citizens could be here and that they'd have a representative. That may not, whether that works or not, that's something that we need, that I would like some input on, because I'm in charge of getting that committee put together, so. Peter, thoughts?
Peter Mann from Planning and Zoning. We did have a resident from West Linden speak at the recent Planning and Zoning meeting, and I specifically asked him if he was a year-round resident and would he be willing to serve on the committee. And he offered his name and phone number to Maggie, so it should be in the minutes from P&Z.
Okay.
It may be one person, but it may be to break the ice that you're looking for to get it moving sooner.
Sure. One of the things that I was hoping to accomplish, I kind of stated, but the summer residents often feel like they don't get a voice in what happens in their neighborhood, because a lot of them go back to their main home, most of them actually in that neighborhood, other states, and it's not easy for them to be part of what's happening. I know from history the city certainly does nothing to try to wait till they leave, but just the way timing goes in the year, there's busier times where things really can't be addressed. This is kind of the time of year when we do address those things, and to try to give them a little more sense that they're being heard, was looking to kind of wait. But I'm certainly very willing to talk with a few of the residents down there. They have a big email chain already in place that they've been using the last few months. So it maybe is possible to, that a point person from their neighborhood could be appointed or agreed to. They could be part of the process. My question that I have is, do we feel that that it would be beneficial to move that up a month or 2 or 3, or I'm just looking for some feedback. Tom? Yeah, please.
I think it'd be in the city's interest to get moving as soon as possible. Some of the construction is underway, as I understand it, or will be soon, and by May they'll be well underway. I think we need to have an idea of what the city outside of Grandview, what concerns we have, and start putting a plan together or some thoughts that we have, so we're ahead of it, so something isn't getting constructed in the way of maybe a road improvement that needs to be done. Not that still wouldn't happen, but I think it'd be good for us to have at least a small group put together who stays on top of this and starts to address this from a whole city perspective.
Okay.
So yes, I January or February, I would like to see it.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Thank you for your input.
And then follow up on Tom, just coordinating with this, I would just offer March would be, based on their schedule that they've outlined on here, it would be helpful if the city had some type of committee no later than March to, react and integrate, decisions and stuff that are, provide information that this consultant will be working on during March and, April and May, coming up with the phase 1 and phase 2 services in this RFP.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Well, Tom, I'll probably look to connect with you right after in the next week to 10 days or something, maybe have a little conversation and try to talk about that committee a little bit, and maybe Jenny be part of that, and we'll see what we can do to start getting that put together.
Let me ask a question. With the Public Works Commission we talked about, we have a few members from that area.
I think that's part of the discussion that we'd have, is what would it look like, and how do we want to put it together? Who would be invited, as far as outside of the city, so on. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mark. New business this evening. Under E, Number one is a resolution approving final 2017 tax levy collectible in 2018. We need a motion on that.
Mr. Mayor, I move a resolution number 17-7 as presented by the city staff in the total amount of $2,154,969.
Seconded by Johnson. Discussion? John? Ross? Okay. I have none. Hearing none then, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion for final tax levy passes. Item number 2, approval of the 2018 City of Nisswa budget. And is there some, it says here, information to be provided at the meeting. Is there some new information, Jenny?
There's not new information as far as the same that the council saw at the last workshop meeting, but there was a sheet placed at each of your seats for tonight. Total revenues and expenditures for all funds, including the general fund, all of our special revenue funds, is summarized on that sheet. Total revenues for 2018 is $7,387,214, and total expenditures is $7,423,339. So I'd be looking for a motion to approve the budget as you reviewed at the last budget workshop and reflected here.
Mr. Mayor,
Don?
just for the benefit of the audience that may be confused, the difference in the levy, which we just passed, was $2.7 million, and what you just read was $7 million. Would you very briefly explain the difference?
Yes, absolutely. So the levy is just one piece of the revenue stream that the city receives. We receive revenues from our fees and services. We have a couple of special revenue funds with Spirits of Nisswa, the Pickle, and our sewer fund. And so all of that combined brings us to the $7 million number, which is all of the activities of the city. So yes, the general fund itself is a much smaller amount, but we have to approve a total budget for all of the departmental activities. So
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I'll make the motion to approve the 2007 city budget as presented here and presented by Jenny.
I'll second that.
Just a question, did you say 2007, or
Yeah,
should it be
that's what I thought.
2018?
2018, sorry.
Just so you amend, John, you amend.
I'll amend it to approval of the 2018 city.
And I'll
Budget.
second that. Amen.
Okay, discussion, gentlemen? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Budget is set for 2018. Thank you for all your hard work on that, Jenny, and the department heads who were involved with that.
You're very welcome.
Item number 3, E3, recommendation from Planning and Zoning Commission to adopt the City of Nisswa Comprehensive Plan Update, and that is a action item. So I would look for a motion on that.
And if I could, I do apologize. There is a resolution that has been put on top of that item. So if the council wants to move forward with approving the comp plan tonight, we will do that by resolution. You can certainly have your comments and discussion ahead of time. It will require a 4/5 vote to approve and to adopt the comp plan. We do have individuals here tonight, Ashley and Tad, who could certainly speak to the comp plan a little bit if you'd like any information or whatever the council would like. And we do have a video that we'd like to play as well. So-
Okay, well, sorry I was trying to move that along so fast.
That's okay.
So you want to play the video right now for us then?
We wanna-
Or
All right, we can kick that off.
Advanced planning, zoning, 324.
We love this one because it's right in the middle of lakes area. Well, we love Nisswa. We've been coming up here since I was a kid.
I've been coming to Nisswa for really as long as I can remember.
Obviously, it's a great place to raise a family. This is where I grew up as a kid, went to school.
I'm from Colombia in South America, and what brings me to Nisswa is love.
There's so much here in Nisswa. It's amazing.
People are here to vacation. They're extraordinarily pleasant. We get people from all over the country, and so you get to learn their stories, see what they do, what they like. It helps keep us abreast up here too in this north central Minnesota area. We meet a lot of really neat people from all over. We have people come down from Canada and everything stuff too. So it's really kind of a really big tourist destination. And our business relies on the tourists coming.
The shops are so unique and amazing.
We come into Rafferty's every time we come up here. We love the shops, window shopping.
My favorite thing has to be the chocolate dogs. I mean, when I think of Nisswa, this is what I grew up loving. This is where I've now worked and grown up to love. Happy hour at the chocolate dogs and smoothies at the Underrod deck. And the mini donuts. Those are some of our faves. Definitely. It's an active community. People are happy here.
The thing I like the most, I think, is actually the Paul Bunyan Trail in the back area. Being a utilitarian cyclist and doing a lot of commuting myself, it's one of the things that I really enjoy.
And I love to ice skate, and of course we have a lake, so we are able to do that. And I think it's just a small town feel without the drama of a small town.
The atmosphere around here between the lakes, all the activities, the events, anything to do, every day, every weekend there's something going on.
Gee, just a couple of weeks ago we were up here to see bagpipers on St. Patrick's Day.
The turtle races. And the turtles. Probably the turtle races.
We've had turtle races here since I was a little kid. We have turtle brokers. It reminded me of that TV show, Mayberry RFD. It was just such a beautiful town. It's just such a diverse group of people. We get along, and we have the sole purpose of just living a great life up here and sharing that with the people who come up here.
You just kind of feel like you're at home, and everybody's your family there.
And if you need something, there's always someone to call, and there's always someone there to help you get something done.
It's a way of life, I guess, that my wife and I have always dreamt of living.
So you see a lot of smiles.
Everyone just seems happy.
And it's just a fun place to be.
We're like having a party. I think that when you say Minnesota Nice, I think it's the epitome of Minnesota Nice. I think it's small town America at its really, truly finest.
I want to go vacation there. That was very nicely done.
Very nice. Well put together.
It is a wonderful video, and we want to thank NJPA for taking the time to do that as part of this process. I think it's a great add-on for the community, and I'll certainly defer to the council for how you would like to have the conversation. If there's information you would like as part of this, we have Desmond here and Don that were part of the Planning Commission public hearing level, and as I mentioned, Ashley and Tad are here as well to help provide any information that you would like.
Okay, thank you. Don, I heard you saying a little something. Can you share with
Well,
planning and zoning?
I guess I will have to say that the public planning and zoning did have the public hearing portion of this, and then after some, I should say, considerable discussion back and forth on the pros and cons of the document, the motion was made to approval, and it was passed by a 3-2 vote, so it was not unanimous. We have some people here on the Planning Commission who voted no, if you want to know why they voted no. I think one of the things under consideration was people are thinking that if we pass this and approve the plan, it's a legal document that we have to do what it says in the plan. That is not the case. It's just a direction for the city. It's not required by law or anything else. It's advisory. But there's a lot of good stuff in there, and personally, there's some stuff I wouldn't want to do in there too. So it's a little bit of both. So that's my feelings. If we approve it, I would take it under advisement that it's a guideline for the city, not a legal document.
Okay, thank you, Don. And I was involved a good number of years ago with one of the comp plan updates. And it is, it is a melding pot of ideas. There's no doubt about that. And I would certainly agree that even that back then I didn't personally agree with everything that was in it. But a lot of work went into it, and I know a lot of work has gone into this one. I would certainly like to hear what concerns there are, as part of this. So, is there, Ann? So, yeah, if you just please state your name and so on, Ann. Thank you.
Ann Loftman. I'm a Planning and Zoning Commissioner. I have just a preamble here. I have a very strict policy. I never get sick. I don't get cold. Tonight I have a cold. My voice is a little weak. I told my husband I would move to Minnesota 10 years ago if I didn't have to drive in the snow. I drove in the snow to get here. So I felt compelled to come. Last thing is, I'm a speed talker. So fasten your seatbelts, and I will try and talk slow. Okay, I'm not a professional city planner, and this is my first experience with the development of a comprehensive plan. I replaced Whitty on the committee after, I believe, the third meeting. However, as P&Z Commissioner, I am expected to base my decisions on the comprehensive plan as well as city ordinances, and thus must find the plan usable. I believe the draft comprehensive plan is much like the highly criticized Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. In 2008, Millennium Development Goals and 18 targets were set to be accomplished by 2015. 8 goals, 18 targets. In 2015, 17 Sustainable Development Goals and 169 targets were set to be accomplished by 2030. 17 goals, 169 targets. The Sustainable Development Goals of the UN have been highly criticized as being meaningless because they are so numerous they provide little or no direction. I believe the draft comprehensive plan is similarly fatally flawed. I appreciate the work that has gone into it by Ashley Kaiserschott from NJPA and Don Espy from Region 5. They did a fair job trying to get community input. However, when it came to writing the draft, they may have been in a bit of a catch-22. Beyond the major themes, they wrote the document with little oversight from the volunteer and sporadically attending steering committee members. With the city's P&Z administrator resigned, the process continued without professional representation by the city. The steering committee was indeed steered. At the first open house, it was apparent that some of the steering committee members had specific agendas to advance, and this became more apparent as the process unfolded. I must admit, they briefly had me drinking from the Kool-Aid. For example, I would love to have more bike trails, if they are free. At the second open house, the goal with the second highest positive response was provide cost-effective quality services. Yet the comprehensive plan does not address cost. In the first survey, there were 110 complete responses and 68 partial responses. The second shorter survey had 113 responses. I would suspect that a good percentage of these respondents completed both surveys. At the very least, a few of the participants are not citizens of Nisswa, such as interested and vested shop owners. We must be careful in assuming percentage of participation based on our population sign, which does not take into account these participants or the numerous seasonal residents. I worry that the vast, silent majority who may be happy with the status quo has not been given consideration. I fear the desire to want to put this project behind us. I fear the desire is to put this project behind us. I know I would like to. No one wants to do the work to make this a usable document. However, it need not be the tone that we have in front of us. Indeed, it is a case where less is more. The city should benefit with an achievable number of SMART goals: specific, measurable, agreed upon, realistic, time-based. SMART. The problem with adopting this document and assuming, worst case, it just becomes a dust catcher as it can and will be used to justify variances to the P&Z Commission that did not necessarily represent the desire of the city and its citizens. I was going to respectfully ask that my name be removed from the document. I have decided to leave it in, so if necessary, I can speak to its creation and the validity of its contents. The P&Z Commission voted 3-2, a margin of 1, to recommend the draft to City Council. The two voting against it were the two members most actively involved in the process. Thank you for listening to my concerns.
Thank you, Ann. Appreciate that very much. Is there anyone else here that would like to share any thoughts? Okay. Council? Discussion?
Well, I was one who voted no, but on reconsideration, and I should say reconsideration, and my opening comments were, if this is not considered a legal document, but an advisory document, I'm okay with that. And some people thought it was supposed to be a legal document, and they were bound completely by what was in there. Well, that is not true. So I want to make sure that it's advisory only, because there's a lot of stuff in there that I don't think we can do as a city, and some of the things we wouldn't agree with. So that's why I say advisory.
Okay, thank you, Don. Tom, I'm not doubting Mr. Jacobson, but at all, but just to reconfirm that this is not a binding document?
It is not a binding document. It is meant as a series of guideposts. It does, as you know, come up often in zoning decisions, at least, reference to whether the plan that might be at issue comports with the comprehensive plan. It's part of the boxes that get checked in those considerations. But no, it is really a series of guideposts, is the way I'd say it.
Since we're on this, I have a question kind of in relation to this.
Please.
So right here, it says, the purpose of this plan for City Council is threefold. First, it provides the legal basis for land use regulations such as zoning and subdivision control. What does that mean?
In regards to, it doesn't hold a lot of water, in a way.
No, I know, but it's using the thing, legal basis. So
Yeah.
I'm asking Tom, what does that?
Ross, it's the way I'd say that, the way I'd restate what that says, is it probably is a framework on which your zoning ordinances and other things hang, those things being the nuts and bolts of how decisions get made, but the overarching consideration of how things comport with the planning document, especially when it comes to, for instance, zoning decisions or where things are in the city, that kind of thing. So,
Is legal just a poor choice of word there, or?
well, the statute sets forth the fact of the ability to have a comprehensive plan. But the comprehensive plan isn't the thing you look at when you're deciding whether or not to approve an application. It's your zoning ordinances.
Gary?
From a procedural standpoint, if we were to, so I can talk into it really loud, but so from a procedural standpoint, if we were to not pass this tonight, then does it go back to planning and zoning what happens? Is it just dead? Is it?
Very good question.
I think you could do two things. You could send it back to the planning commission for rework, or you could just say no and it would evaporate.
That makes sense. John or Ross?
I spent the day talking to department heads that are going to be dealing with this plan directly. And I guess in talking with planning and zoning administrator, I'm not making light of anything, but this is kind of like the Pirates Code. It's guidelines. It's not in granite. Desmond feels that what we have is something that he can work with very easily. I think there are issues or things in there that, sorry, ain't gonna happen. But, this is the first one I've really looked at and understanding it a little bit from prior things that had happened in Pequot. It's not saying you have to do it. It's saying, hey, this is what this is kind of what the people would like to see. What ends up happening is based on what we can feasibly do or want to do, or what the people what we end up with. So it's always a planning process anyway. I talked with the Parks and Rec director. Again, liked the plan. He was happy with it. He said, I can work with this. It's not a problem. And I think what it's going to do is it's going to come back to planning and zoning to say, well, this is, if we're going to do this, like the plan says, we have to change these ordinances. But again, like Tom said, it gives you an idea of kind of what people are looking at. And since I visited with our city administrator, she assured me that, again, it's something that can be worked with. Our staff doesn't seem to have an issue with it. I share some of what the naysayer on P&Zs, the naysayer were saying, the negative votes are saying, but if the staff can use it as it is and implement it ultimately we have oversight on it anyway, because we have to approve whatever is going to change or be done, and we have the parties that are going to look at it. Just because there's a lot of work put into it doesn't mean we should approve it, but if the staff's good with it, it gives them some guidelines to work off of. So.
Sure. And I don't want to necessarily be biased or sounding, but there's also we have our existing comp plan in place that is what all the department heads work with today. And so if this was to not pass, there's still the previous comp plan without the updates or the changes. My take is, I really resonate with the fact that if there is people who want to do something in the city, a development, a building or something, and they go to the comp plan and they say, well, the comp plan says we should have industrial. It's like, wow. I'm not sure how many people in Nisswa would be for that. I don't know. I've never asked the question. But to be able to bring that and say, well, here's what your comp plan says, and then for planning and zoning to say, well, that's just a guideline, that's really contradictory. So I'm troubled with that sort of tension within it. I personally also am a little concerned that there wasn't a unanimous vote on it. The fact that it was that close, to me, is concerning when it's a document that we're supposed to use as a guideline. Now, that being said, I absolutely want to thank the people, who've been working on this, NJPA and Region 5 who've been involved with this, all of the people involved. The time is well spent for our community, but there may be some areas that we should take a look at and planning and zoning should take a look at to try to get a unanimous vote. Because this is a document that is supposed to work as a guideline. And to have something that's supposed to work as a guideline maybe in conflict with the beliefs of the city as a whole, because there are a lot of people who, out of the 2,000 citizens, there weren't necessarily 2,000 people involved with this, and thank goodness for that. That could be messy. But I would really like to see a more unanimous vote on it before I would feel good about passing it. That's my take.
I had similar thoughts. If it was that close in P&Z, I would want to feel confident and comfortable with the rec P&Z before I felt comfortable moving forward. And if it's that close, I'm not sure I'm there.
If you send it back to P&Z, I don't think you're going to get anything back that's substantial changes. A lot of work went into this. The 7 main findings are still valid. It's the points underneath each of the 7 main points that we had a little problem with. Some things that it said we should do, and I don't think we can do by law. But that's why I emphasize that if we accept it on the condition that it's a guideline and not a legal document, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that, and that was one of the negative votes. So I personally don't think that we should send it back to P&Z. I think that's just going to muddle it up and be even worse than what we have right now, personally.
So answer me this, is the comp plan then, this new comp plan as is with the concerns that you've had, do you feel it's a better document than what we have in place, or what we have in place is better than this?
I think it's a snapshot of what people are thinking this year rather than what they thought 10 years ago. And I think some of the thoughts have changed as technology changes, as, 371 changed, and a lot of other things. So I think it's a little bit clearer picture. And I don't disagree with the 7 main points that they came up with. Just how do you implement them that we had a little bit of wrangle over.
Well, and that is potentially a real concern too, to me, is, if you have something that there's disagreement on by 40%, and then and one vote would make all the difference in the world, and then there's pieces that may be hard to implement. I understand it's a guideline, but it can be really confusing to people looking to do business in the city of, or maybe not business so much, but building could be a big issue. I really honestly anticipated that when the comp plan was done, that there would be a unanimous vote to move it forward. And, I'm sure I'm sure most of it is very good, but if there's, but I would struggle with being able to vote a yes when there's one vote would make all the difference in the world. So,
well, like I said, I was one of the negative votes, but looking at it from a different point of view, that it is not a legal document makes all the difference in the world.
I don't know how many citizens who are not involved with the comp plan would know that or want to make issue with it. That would be hard to say. If you're reading the comp plan and it says we encourage whatever it is, and that is not really what the city is. I'll just use like industrial again, because it's a thing that comes to mind easily. And that's not really the city's goal. I really don't want people thinking, oh, this is great, I want to start an industrial business in this one, and then hold the document up and say, and have to have planning and zoning defend, well, that's only a guideline. And so I've shared my views. So.
Well, I'll make a motion on the resolution that staff presented to us here. I'd move the resolution that staff presented.
I'll second that.
Discussion?
I guess I struggle with it. It's too broad in some areas. In what it says, it says sidewalks. We're pretty limited where we can put sidewalks. We're not going to put sidewalks on my road. We're not going to, but it's talking about sidewalks in the entire community, at least the way I read it. I don't know if it necessarily, in being so broad, it's beyond what Nisswa can do. It talks about, having people, building neighborhoods close to downtown where you can walk to downtown. Again, in our community, in the way it's laid out, there's only so many land around, and that's one of the parts that I struggle with. It talks about the water system. Is that really feasible? And so that's where I struggle. I also struggle in where it lays down for developmentally commercial. To me, it seems to contradict itself in, we want to develop commercial, but we don't want to take down trees. We want to, and some of them things, and I do have great concern for especially the highway corridor and how, people aren't lining up to come to Nisswa. And so when we do get somebody, stuff like this is used to push someone else's agenda because we want this business or we don't want this business. It makes us sound like we're going to choose what businesses come to town, and that's not reality, and it certainly hasn't been reality. The other thing where I struggle with it is in the fact that if most of the stuff in the plan is not achievable and it's not feasible, we know, yes, we'd love to have bikeways throughout the city, but we also know them are very, very expensive. If there's stuff that's not achievable, then I struggle with why it's being in there, because it's something that we want to use. So if it's something we want to use, it should be usable to what we have for resources in our community and stuff like that. And I think it goes too much beyond, and it's a lot of pages. And I just wonder how much of it's actually relevant to what we can do. So that's why I struggled when I read with it. And I don't know what, honestly, I don't know what to do with it, because, I understand using it as a guideline, but to me, it should be more relevant if we're going to use it as a guideline. Even if we're going to just use it as a guideline, it should be more relevant. It even talks about, doing water, because, for the fields at the golf course, because we're spraying on the fields at golf course currently. Well, we're not spraying on the fields at golf course currently. So that's where I struggle with it. I think if we could send it back to planning and zoning, and I know what you're saying, Don, so but if we can, I don't know if we can tweak it enough to just rein it in a bit to make it more relevant to what we actually can do and have the resources to do, and what's logical to do. I guess I would feel better about it. But that's my opinion on it, and I don't even know how I'm going to vote, so I got to try and make that decision here in the next second.
If we could, being this is my first time around on a comp plan, is it possible for us to do that? Have P&Z sit down and, like you mentioned, Don, it's not necessarily the item, it's the little individual points underneath that you all struggled with. Can we have NJPA and Region 5 sit down with P&Z and get their intake on it? What is the problem? And then bring it back. Is that something that gets done?
I would maybe take that a step further and say a workshop with council, planning and zoning, and MPGA.
Yeah.
But
because it sounds
I think we can be there with it, but I think it just needs some consideration from the city, from city leadership standpoint and reality a little bit.
And I think, if staff thinks they can work with it, that's fine, that's good. But if we all have the same basic concern, maybe what you're saying is we all get together and maybe NJPA Region 5 and the P&Z board get direct feedback from all the council. And so we can say, well, this is where our constituency is saying, or what our issues are with it. What we don't understand about it or otherwise, that might be helpful.
Thank you, John. Jenny?
Based on the feedback tonight, thank you all very much for that. If it makes sense, you could certainly table the item, and if you're willing to have a workshop or something where we can maybe go through some specifics and details, that would be a step forward in getting more comfort with the comp plan. And I would guess that Ashley and Ted would be welcoming to be a part of that conversation and help provide either insight as to why things are the way they are, or help kind of guide how that would work. And you could invite the Planning and Zoning Commission or however you'd like to structure that.
we have a motion in front of us and a second, so.
So we could vote on it, or if there was a change of feelings at all, that could be withdrawn. So I will just ask that question if there's interest in withdrawing. If not, then we will move forward with a vote.
Well, I made the motion. I think it's still a valid motion in that if we send it back, I don't think after we have a couple of meetings, I don't think we're going to get anything significantly different than what we have right now. The main points are there. The main 7 points that gives us direction. It's just the implementation of those 7 points and how you get those accomplished. I think Planning and Zoning Commission can meet with Ashley probably in one meeting. We go over that and come back to the council with a recommendation then.
What about the workshop idea?
I think you have too many people with too many ideas. I think it gets pretty muddled after a while. I think the smaller the group, the better it works to begin with, personally. But.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with that in some ways, but I think maybe what's showing right now is maybe there's a feeling that there wasn't a broad enough base of input, which I know everything that could possibly done was done. And I mean, I just go back to the fact that the vote was very marginal. I mean, something like this, I would just anticipate it should come back with a unanimous vote, really. I mean, if that's kind of split, then. But, so, motion as is, we vote?
Well, that's my motion, and it was seconded. I don't know if the second one's hold.
But that, yeah, I second it, yeah.
So my understanding is we vote. If it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, it's dead, unless we take up, I mean, it's just dead as far as there's no direction.
Right, then you can give direction.
Okay, very good. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Well, let's do a roll call, just to make it easy in case there is. Okay, so Don, we'll start with you.
Aye.
Aye. Gary?
Nay.
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 Aye.
So the motion fails a vote of 3-2, or 2-3, whichever way you want to look at that.
I'd like to make a motion on a motion, Mr. Mayor, that we send it back to P&Z to take our input, the input from the city administrator where we feel, and P&Z can discuss with NJPA and Region 5 our concerns, the concerns from the P&Z members that they have, and perhaps they can, and so they can look at the document, and if they can, make the appropriate changes, and then resubmit it to us when it's ready.
I would second that motion.
Discussion.
I think, let's give them a first crack at it. Maybe it'll come back and they've heard what we had to say. And again, guys, I know the work that went into this, and I did not make my decision lightly. But if it can come back a better document, we made the right choice.
The one difference in what you've proposed in a motion is you say come back with, after looking at our thoughts. I'm not sure any of us have truly laid out all of our thoughts. So, I mean, I think there's a big discussion, it seems to me, to be had. So, I mean, I would suggest a motion that basically says the same thing, except that at the end, city engineer, or city administrator, and say NJPA, Planning and Zoning would come back with a recommendation as to how to move forward to work through these issues or questions. That's my discussion point.
Well, why don't we do, if I may, I would amend my motion to say that council members can submit their questions or their objections to the document to the city administrator, who will then provide that information when they meet and look at it, to speed things along a little.
How about like input from planning and zoning members or anybody
Well,
else? Is it open to,
It's going back to the P and Z, yeah. That was the first part of the motion, was that it would be going back to P and Z. So if I amend that by saying council members to submit to the city administrator their questions or their concerns on the plan, so that she can take it with P and Z and they can address it with NJPA and them, then I would amend it in that respect, that council members can submit their concerns to the city administrator to be included in the meeting with P and Z, NJPA, and Region 5. I would amend my motion to stipulate that. Does that make sense?
It does. Do you second that, Ross?
I'll second that.
Okay.
So discussion again. A question that I have is to NJPA Region 5, Jenny, Desmond, Don, is that Matthew, too, I'm sorry, Matthew, is that the feedback you feel you need to move forward? That we get information and then that's where it goes, rather than looking to figure out a direction and how to move forward with it? I mean, so I guess the question I have in there is, have you seen a comp plan not pass in the previous, and then, no, not at all? Okay, so then there isn't any history as to how you proceeded forward with that. Okay. Because that's my concern, is that whatever we do, I'd just like to see a process that it's like, well, that's a logical process for how this should move forward. And I'm not saying what's presented isn't, but is there anything else that would help move it, to get all the information together to move it forward?
I think if we could, we can take this motion, I'll get together with those who are involved, and we'll come up with a plan or something and give that to the council so you're aware, and kind of go from there and kind of do that at the same time, if that works. We need to, I think, kind of huddle up and get back together as far as what next steps might be for this.
Okay. That's my way of thinking, yeah.
Okay.
Huddle up and what's the next steps? So is that basically then what the motion is? I mean, I heard some different things in there, I thought, but
I'll make sure that the city council has time to provide feedback. We'll revisit with planning and zoning and work together to gather more input, put the concerns together, try to get that spelled out and identified what areas of the comp plan and the details that we can adjust, delete, whatever that might be, and get a little more unanimous feel from the commission.
then hopefully in the end we will have a revote by the Planning and Zoning Commission to send it back to the council.
Yes. Yep.
Any other discussions, thoughts, information wanted, needed? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. E5, acceptance of donation for development at...
E4. Sorry, you missed number 4.
You're right, I did, I checked it off too soon. E4, thank you, John. Recommendation from Planning and Zoning Commission to approve the rezoning application 039-17 for Thomas Steffens Good Old Days Resort. Is there, Desmond, do you have anything? Jenny, do you have anything, or you just want us to move forward, or?
I certainly can invite Desmond up if you feel like you'd like a little bit of the history, the background on this, but the information's in your packet to approve the rezone application as presented.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move the City Council concur with the findings of the Planning and Zoning Commission about the rezoning of a 1.73 acre tract of property from shoreland residential to commercial waterfront Then at that point, insert the PIN numbers for the legal.
I'll second. Go ahead.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now E5, acceptance of donation for development of Nisswa Lake Park. Matthew, anything? Not asking that you do, but okay.
I'll make a motion that we accept the donation for the development of Nisswa State Park, or Nisswa Lake Park.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
The amount was $50,000.
Correct.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. E6, acceptance of bid for pavilion at Nisswa Lake Park development. I actually have something that I just wanted to bring up about that, and that is, you know, I looked at the picture of the structure that is being presented for construction, and I just had some concerns about the fact that it was very utilitarian in looks compared to kind of the more upscale look that I thought was being considered a year or so ago. And I'm absolutely in favor of a pavilion, but it seemed, just in looking at it, it seemed like it seems like maybe we were looking to fit a building to a budget rather than looking at what is it that would be the most appropriate for that building. And then if it exceeded the monies in hand, there could be some fundraising for it. And, you know, what happens with this park is going to be, you know, as we look at bringing a bike trail in and it becoming a major connection and major piece of what I feel is going to be the Gull Lake Bike Trail, and as it represents boaters coming to Nisswa, people using the park, that it just doesn't seem like it fits with what was being discussed in the meetings and the putting together of this phase 2 piece of the finishing of the park. So, you know, I have a concern about the look of it. And
Question?
yes, please, Don.
Just a question for Matthew. Before we accepted the $50,000 donation just a second ago, how much money is left in that fund that's ready for the park? You used some of the money for the trail. You know how much is left roughly? Yeah.
There's
Just roughly.
about $30,000.
So it's 50, and that way it's up tonight, and 30, that's, we already have, that's 80,000. The reason I ask that is because the bid that we have in front of us now is only for the material. There's no construction, there's no land removal of existing equipment, site preparation, excavating. Did you take that into consideration?
Yes.
What kind of numbers are you looking at there?
In researching the installation of this structure, I've approached two different vendors. They were able to ballpark it without architectural drawings of the actual structure itself. Once the purchase is made, then the vendor will give us the actual drawings of the construction and how it's installed and have all the directions for them. But the two installation bids that I have received, not bids. I don't want to use that very loosely, that term. But they were 29,000, pardon me, quotes, 29,000 and 32,000, and those included the concrete slab underneath it, all the installation materials, excavating, site prep, cleanup, everything that's involved. And there were also, if I could address something that the mayor said about the looks of it, there are different options that we can do in the future to liven it up a little bit, which includes stonework around the pillars on the outside, and those are some of the things that were actually included in the original design concept that was approved in 2015 by this council.
The original design concept had restrooms and grills and everything else in there, didn't they?
That's a separate structure.
That's a separate structure
Yep.
from this?
Yep.
Okay.
Matthew, did you by chance get any information on that other style of building?
I wasn't able to get anything back there in the short time.
I had a meeting with Matthew and kind of just shared my concern about the utilitarian style of it and look. And there was a brochure, a sales brochure from this company, and there was actually a kind of a much, to my eye, a much nicer looking structure. And I know it was very short notice and that, but I had asked Matthew if he would send out like an email and see what that kit would cost. And that's my reference to asking him about that.
So how did that design differ than this?
It was, instead of being kind of octagon shape, it was a moderately steeper gabled roof going this way with another gable coming out the other way. And it kind of seemed to fit what you see for Lake Home style shapes and gables and that a little more. I don't know if Matthew, if you have that catalog. Or
It was 40 by 60. It was really big. The current one is 30 foot octagonal.
But they do make different
I
sizes.
understand that, but to get a price for that existing structure wouldn't really match up to what we're doing. It'd be 6 times the price, but guessing. But we had a design committee that was set up by the Parks Commission that looked at the designs, a couple of different design issues that would to approve. They approved the design. I went out and got 2 bids. The bids came in at $32,000 and $31,000 and some change, and $22,728 for the prices for similar structures from 2 different companies, and that's where we're at right now.
Matthew, not to put you on the spot here, but when the original donation came in, and it was for the pavilion, and we talked about building the pavilion to how the actual, from the steering committee, do you remember the cost of that? Was that 100?
It was $35,000.
No, but all done, all said and done.
The original estimates from the engineers that we were basing the donation amount on was $35,000.
But when we talked about in that meeting, that wasn't going to be even close to, was it? What it actually would be?
I'm sorry, I might not understand your question.
Remember we had that meeting way back when the donation first came with the Friends, and they were talking about that the original design for the pavilion was 35, but now with today's cost and everything, do you remember because we were talking about, well, maybe we didn't have to do the cement work now. That whole thing all told.
Oh, sure.
Do you know what I'm
Yes,
talking
I
about
do.
now?
That was $104,000. That included electric, bringing the electric in and power to the, bringing the power to the property and wiring it. This will be prefabbed for electric, but it doesn't include the electricity being run to the property. That structure also included the actual costs of the equipment, and these are estimates by WSN. Costs of the equipment were around 70 with the installation, and then all the other additional features that went into it, electrical engineering fees, and then the what a 10% buffer essentially is what they pad it with, and that's how we got to that original number. By eliminating the engineering fees and doing this in-house, which was something that the mayor had recommended that we do to help save some money, this is where we're at now.
And I guess my point to that would be to do it to that extent is going to cost quite a bit more. I understand and I agree that we can do some stuff down the road to bring this up to a standard that's acceptable, but I'll reference the light poles in the pocket park at $10,000 a piece. I mean, it's, yes, it looks, well, I'm not even sure it looks nice, but, we want it to look nice, but we also have to keep in mind where we're at with budget and what we're doing, and to, I don't think this is totally bad, especially if you come back later when we're building some buildings and we know what that look is going to be. I think that we can modify this to make it fit into that look and still have it be so. But in the meantime, we can have, for a reasonable amount of money, which I believe it is, anyways, we can have a pavilion. So that's my 2 cents on it.
And, when a structure is built, there's always, the add-ons and the lipstick that you can do to dress a building up, and that goes endlessly. And that's fine. But the structure you put up initially has a shape to it. And that shape is what gives the building its personality. And then you add the decorations to it if you want down the line. I'll just say again, my concern is that we're fitting a budget, or we're fitting a building to a budget, instead of saying, that's the picture of what we want. And if we're short a few dollars, or we're short some dollars, then let's do some fundraising. Let's put the old thermometer up with the red ink in it, and let's raise the money to get it up to that next level, rather than having the budget on the wall and saying, what can we do for that budget? I mean, this is going to be one of maybe the only real building at the park. We're yet to know, hopefully, and we anticipate that the restrooms will work something out with the DNR and that, but this will be the primary structure on this piece of land that showcases our park. And my concern is that we're fitting a building to a budget instead of saying, this is what we want. What's the path we're going to use to get there?
I have a technical question. It says this price is good for 30 days, and it was issued on 11/3. Well, 12/3 has gone by and passed. It's past the 30 days. Are you sure you can still get it for the amount that they said?
Yes, I just talked to Midwest Playscapes today. Everything's fine regarding the quote.
Peter, do you have some thoughts? I saw you. Okay.
Did the original, remind me again, the original plans that were done up, kind of that big picture schematics we had, that contained a gazebo, did it not?
Yes, it did.
And so this is taking that spot.
That's correct.
Yeah.
There's actually a picture of what WSN had. The structure that we're talking about is a pole barn metal roof with galvanized pipe columns. Octagon shape, not a lot different than a corn silo. That's kind of a big corn silo. That's kind of my take on it. As
So
compared
same company and the same structure base as Whipple Beach down in Baxter. That's where the referrals came from in regards to the installation prices as well.
And I mean, I have no issue with the company at all, but after seeing their photo gallery of many different ideas, I thought there was really some nicer looking buildings than this, but I don't know what they cost. And, so in a sense, I would like to table it and to just find out a little bit more about a different style, what it might cost. That's my take. Because again, this is going to be a 50 to 80, 100-year building, structure. I don't want to take it lightly. So council, thoughts,
I'm going to
action?
make a motion. I'm going to make a motion to accept the bid from Midwest Playscapes in the amount of $22,728 for the pavilion. Money to come from the donation of $50,000.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Just based on the looks.
Sure. Thank you.
E7, resolution approving State of Minnesota Joint Powers Agreement with the City of Nisswa on behalf of its police department regarding the Minnesota Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, the ICAC, and we need council motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move Resolution 17-8, resolution with the State of Minnesota for Joint Powers Agreement, and authorize you to sign the documents.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. E8, resolution adopting increase in sewer rates.
Just one question. Percentage-wise, what is it?
The increase in the quarterly billing for the usage is 3%. 3%, yes. And for the connection fee, it's 6%.
I'd move the resolution as presented by staff.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Krautkramer. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. E9, approval of list of roads for 2018 street reconstruction project. And I believe this is, amounts to five streets, Tom? Or? Okay. Yeah. And it says reconstruction, which would be basically milling, repaving of approximately five streets, as was on the list. So, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the list of roads for 2008 street reconstruction project with the addition that assessments will not be used for the project, for this.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Johnson. Discussion?
Are we a little premature in the assessments not being used without dealing with the assessment policy, or?
I don't know what we're going to deal with on that, so that's why I threw it in there, under the old business thing.
Anyone else?
I don't know if I can go with that, if we're gonna. I'd like to see the assessment things be settled first, so.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion passes 3-2. Jacobson and Kraut-Kramer voting nay. Old business this evening, F1, update on Edna Lake Road options. A is just looking at this once. Did you want to do this all as, I don't even, we want to do these individually?
If I could,
Please, yeah, if you'd like to.
quickly, just to help kind of reorient where
Absolutely.
we're at. We approved at the special meeting last week to enter in the master contract agreement with the state of Minnesota so that we are able to work through whatever next steps the council feels is necessary for the project. What I did was items A, B, and C are just duplicates from the special meeting. The work order for the guardrail as originally proposed is here, and the bid, and then just information from Excel Energy. The added item is item D, and that is the survey results from Edna Lake Road, and I believe that Roger is here if you would like him to speak on if there's any comments beyond the survey results themselves. But that is where we are at. I'm guessing some public comment there might be some interest from the public to comment and then provide some direction. We can go from there.
Very good. Is there someone here from the Edna Lake Road group who would like to? Roger, do you have results of this survey that was requested at the Public Works meeting the other day? I want to say thank you guys for taking on that task. Short notice, and
we're kind of between veterans of issues on Edna Lake Road, so it's not a big deal. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for showing your concern. Sort of the same concerns that we have on Edna Lake Road. As you recall at the last meeting about this issue, you asked us to survey the residents of Edna Lake Road, and three of us, myself and Bob Bureau and Wayne Van Lee, took on the initiative. We already had email addresses of 90% of the residents on that road. So do you have the results in your packet?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a couple of changes I'd like to make that occurred at about 5 o'clock tonight. I erred in one of the options. So in option 2, you want to change the percentage of A to read 12% rather than 16. And that's A. And then B, option B2, it should be 4% rather than 0. There were some people that really thought that the curve, 6-inch curve, would be the best way to go. So, anyhow, those were the changes that you need to make in that document. So, anyhow, you can see there that the majority of the folks on Edna Lake Road would really rather we wait until next spring. Option 2 represents 58% of the 58% of the residents feel that we should wait until spring, even though there is concern this winter about the possibility of sliding off the edge. However, option 1 did receive 24%, so that was rather high. And what was surprising is, as you look at option 2C, that's, and maybe Bob would like to speak with that because he's got some input. He's had some communications with MnDOT. 2C is a wider curve and lowering the slope. That received 24%. Which was the same amount as doing something this winter. So anyhow, that's all I have on the survey, unless you have comments, questions that you'd like to ask about the survey?
Council, do you have any questions?
I have a question for the city engineer. And the curve and the slope and everything that we have right now, that was done to MnDOT specs, is that correct?
I'll say, the city, MnDOT came up to the right-of-way line, the city made the decision to lower the grade that was around 11% down to 7%. So that MnDOT was really not involved with that, and that's so not to their respect. I mean, they did their portion, but the city lowered the steepness of the hill as part of your project from the right-of-way line back up the hill just past the current DNR landing access road.
So if we took option 2C, which is a wider curve and lower the slope of the curve, that would be a city project or a state project?
Well, that would be, you have to be initiated by the city.
Okay.
Yes, it would be a city project, and then you have to be determined if the Department of Transportation would participate in any, form or fashion of that project.
They're going to turn the street over to us in the spring?
Currently, yes, they gave us a date of sometime in April that they are going to be turning the, what was on, they'll actually, turning End Lake Road up to Highway County 29 back to the city.
And one thought that just came to mind when you were talking, Mark, is, and Roger, we may be done if.
I've dealt with survey. Yeah. Bob has had really done some communication. So Bob, why don't you come up and talk about what you've done?
I just wanted to bring up, we basically took about 40% of the slope out of that, and it's interesting that it's still kind of a problem. I mean, if it was 4% steeper than it is right now, that would make a difference, certainly. Bob?
We were worried about the, how you broaden the curve.
Just please state your name for the record.
Bob Bureau, End Lake Road.
Yeah, thanks, Bob.
And when we got this email back from Jody Martinson, she claimed the DNR was a constraint, and house on the north was a constraint, and 371 was a constraint, so the curve had to be real tight. I didn't understand why we couldn't use the DNR property, so I sent an email to him. I ended up talking with Wade Miller, local office, and he said that, and I talked with Tom, and he mentioned that there was land, the DNR property was originally a grant by the federal government, and so there may be some restrictions with that. So anyway, I talked to Wade, I explained the situation to him, and he said that he believes that we would get an easement if we applied for it on the basis of public safety. Okay. I talked to Dan Anderson in the local MDOT office, MDOT engineering. He was going to call Mark this morning. Did you do that, Mark?
Yes, you did.
Okay. He was going to call Jenny too. Did he talk to you? Okay. I don't know what he told you, but he told me he wanted to work with the city on this. Okay. My original concern was that the $10,000 they kicked in would not go far enough on this. And MDOT had created the situation when they cut off our access to 371. So they needed to own up to a bigger share of that. So that's what I discussed with Dan, and he was going to talk to you guys. Okay. I don't know where that went, but that's where I am with it. Okay. We're going to do it in the spring, or maybe we tie it in with the repaving of End Lake Road. The problem there is that's on that 10-year schedule, not on the 5. So we'd be sitting with that curve for 10 years. Something would have to be done there, either curb or something. And I wanted to follow up with the feds on that. I don't want to go through this whole design process and that, because they want an actual design. They want to know what piece of the land you're going to use. And rather than spend the money doing that, let's clear that with the federal government to make sure that if we submit that, it's going to get approved. Okay? That they will in fact allow a public safety easement. Okay? So that's where I am with it right now.
Okay.
Any questions?
Thank you. Yeah. Any questions for Bob? Thank you, Bob.
I can sit down.
Sure can. So Mark, what conversation took place? Would you please share that with us?
Yeah, well, Dan Anderson from MnDOT called and just, said he had exchanged emails with the city and, he kind of just went over the history that, because of all the federal dollars we use, that MnDOT was unable to, work with that state DNR. So essentially, he just revisited their position was that, they would not be, or they would not be working with the DNR to try to get easement acquisition on the DNR property.
That it would be
have the city of Nisswa leading that.
The city of Nisswa would need to do that.
The city of Nisswa would need to do that.
Okay.
Their understanding, based on a year and a half of dealing with it, they would not be able to work with anyone to obtain an easement or actually purchase of the the DNR property because of how it was funded directly from Congress decades ago.
So did he share at all what the thoughts were if the city was to pursue that as opposed to MnDOT, or?
No, he just, he confirmed that MnDOT would not be pursuing, any type of easement or property acquisition for that, for that curve.
Yep. Basically, the city would have to go and approach the DNR. And talking with Bob, what the DNR or what the feds want to see is a plan. What is it you're looking at doing? And
I will talk to the feds first and get proposed to make sure that this will go through.
Yeah.
First, I want to go all the way to the same day.
We did visit our Public Works Director, myself, the City Administrator, and Bob did talk the other day here. And it's definitely, whatever we decide to do, what our next step might be is something that I think is best done through Tom and Jenny dealing with, we know if we know where they want to go, what steps to jump, but it's not going to be the spring thing. You're dealing with the feds, so it's going to take a while. But it sounds like the DNR, from what I've seen Bob receive back from the DNR from Wade and conversations that Bob relayed to us, that they're willing to work with us on it. But we have to initiate it.
And the full cost initially would fall probably on the city, and then to do a project, something like that, and then we would be engaging at the same time MnDOT as to what their participation would be. Does that sound?
That's my understanding. I asked Stark, the guy with the and we would take more money if we brought the curb. We wouldn't answer that question. So that's why we get back. Charlie Zell, but then I got a call from Dan Anderson. I thought that was a reverse to my question. He didn't want to talk to me. He wanted to talk to me.
Okay. So before us tonight is, not necessarily a decision on that piece, but do we want to do something this winter yet? Or do we want to wait until the ground thaws out, maybe in the next few months? I suppose there could be a lot more discussion about it, whatever the council is thinking. But the question before us tonight is to go ahead with this project of $18,000 or wait until at least spring and do the project in question for a potentially lesser cost, or look at other options, which would be a separate discussion. At least the way I understand it.
From the reaction or from the results of the survey, it looks like not putting in the guardrail is an option for us, waiting till spring, where if it ends up having to go in, it might be cheaper. And it also gives our Public Works Committee, the Public Works Director, time to work with the committee members, with Bob, and maybe find out exactly, whether it's even worth pursuing the DNR. Okay, we got time, because we can't put it in till spring anyway, where it's thought out, it'd be a lot less expensive that way, sounds like. And if we can't do the widening, or it's not looking feasible, or it might have to wait till the 10-year road plan, the bid for the guardrail's still there. I mean, it's not gonna go anywhere but down, hopefully. So we can always act on it, say in April. And that would give Tom and Bob time to dig into that stuff and see what they can come up with, working with Mark, since we're involving state, federal, and us. Should go smooth.
Really smooth. So, I would entertain them. Oh, go ahead, Rob.
Well, here's my issue with it, and I'm probably going to get in trouble here, but I don't care, I guess.
I don't think
you
you're gonna get in trouble.
You guys first came to us with this deal, and it was urgent. You had a gal come up here and tell her story of how she went down the ditch. She said she made it onto the highway. If that night, and I heard her say she made the decision to drive on the highway. If I'd have said that night, I said, ma'am, you made the decision to go on that highway, all of you from that road would have thought I was a heartless bastard. I didn't, because I believed her, and I believed that she made the decision under duress. And we acted quickly. Then it comes back, and I don't know what the reasoning for the change is. I don't know if it's because there's a chance of now hitting the car on the guardrail, and that's going to cost people money. I don't know. But then I bring up the point that we already had one car make it on the highway, and I have the mayor and the three people from the road jump on me. Oh, no, that's not true. Like, she came to a complete stop, looked both ways, and only proceeded when it was safe. She made a rash decision because she was going down a hill, and that could have ended very poorly. And you guys can tell me whatever, but that is what I believe from when she told me the story, and that is what I believe. So the question to me that I have to wrap around is, do we have a safety issue? Because if we do, I'll spend $18,000. A life to me is worth more than that. And I will stand on it that we did have one car make it onto the highway. So there's two things I'm looking for, is that either from our engineer and Tom, I need someone to tell me, is there a safety issue that we need to deal with? And I also would like to hear from our legal representation that, since this is already brought up, if we have another problem this winter, is the city going to have some liability issues if we post that? And I guess that's kind of what I'm looking for here. Tom?
No.
I don't know how dangerous a condition this is, but a general benchmark when you know that you've got a dangerous condition is if you don't fix it, then there's probably heightened liability that goes with that. That's about all I can say.
Okay. So do we have an issue? I mean, do we have an issue that we need to deal with this winter? And even if there is there other options of, barrels or some sort of a temporary barrier that would keep the cars from going down for this winter? But I guess I'd have to be satisfied on that before I...
Well, one thing that came to mind, Ross, is, and Jenny actually had said she would talk with Tom about it to look to get an answer, but I haven't asked about it since, and maybe Tom can address it. But, I believe, just in general, that when the streets are plowed and sand and salt go down, the spreaders on the driver's side goes down the middle of the street generally. Is that pretty accurate, Tom? Because where I'm going with it is, maybe for this winter we add a little bit more sand and salt to the outer lane, the exit lane, to help keep people on the driving surface.
We've been extremely liberal with the amount of salt and sand we put on the road. And
On that curve? you're
yes,
referring
I mean, yes, it does hit the road in the center, but depending on the speed, you set the spinner at it, broadcast it wider, and then the number of passes. And I think, from what I can tell, there's more than adequate salt sand on it. And we'll continue to add when we feel it will help.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, I don't know. I had gotten a call 10 days ago or somewhere in that range. I don't know, maybe it was longer. One of the citizens on Edna Lake Road called me and said, "Oh my gosh, you know, somebody went off the curb again." And actually, Don, you were aware, or you went out there that morning. I don't think you were aware of the call, but you did go out there. I went out there later that morning and looked and walked that ditch. It appeared that the car, or the vehicle, whatever it was, came off at 371 down into the ditch, and then drove up the ditch a ways, and then made efforts to climb its way up onto Edna Lake Road to get back onto a driving surface again. That was the way it appeared to me, because I couldn't see anywhere where anybody had gone, slid off of Edna and down. It looked like it came off the highway, and then there's no tracks really showing that anybody went off the curb. So I called that person back, asked them if they said they had stopped and asked the person who was in the ditch if they were okay and if they needed any help. And they said no, you know, they were like, "No, we made a call and we've got somebody coming to pull us out," or whatever. So this party who called me continued on their way. So when I called back, I mean, I didn't know that at the time. I asked them, I said, "Do you know that they went off of Edna Lake Road or not?" And they said, "Well, no, I really don't." You know, they said, "It is possible maybe they came off at 371. So that is the only other incident that I'm aware of on that curve or in that area. So point being, I guess, just hearing that, Tom, you guys are, you know, putting this pretty adequate amount of sand and salt down. There hasn't been any other incidences. You know, the potential is there that it could wait until spring.
Well, I think the problem is we haven't had a lot of snow up until this week, so it's not been as much of an issue as before. And what I see happening now is what I was afraid of before is we seem to want to kick the can down the road again a little bit more, wait till spring. Well, this is the time of the year when if we're going to have a problem, it's going to happen when we have snow and ice and stuff on the road. I'm with Ross. I would rather spend the money, put the guardrail in to make sure somebody doesn't go over the edge again, because sure as shooting, somebody's going to come along a little bit faster than they should, and they're going to slide, and we're going to have another problem. And I'd rather be proactive rather than saying, "Gee, we should have done that when we had the chance." So I'm more with Ross. I'd rather get the project in and done.
To that, to Tom, or to Ross's point too, Roger, if we can get the DNR to work with us, and let's say we get the easement, and we get to make the curve correct, and we can do everything accordingly, but it's going to have to wait till year 10 when it's on the road project. Are the citizens down there going to say, are they going to be okay living with it the way it is till then, or would they expect the guardrail to go in? It sounds to me like they would expect the guardrail to go in then, pending.
24% say they like the guardrail, but that's not the majority.
Yeah, I understand that. But
You know, I can't
yeah.
answer that.
Okay.
It's, you know, you've got 50-some people that live on that road. And, you know, that's why we did the survey.
Right.
So, John, I really don't know what.
Okay. But you see where I'm going with it then. The odds on favored are, assuming everything falls into place and we are able to make the road correct and lower the hill and do everything and we decide to do it, likely it's not going to happen for a good 8 to 10 years. But we know we have a problem. Signs that signal the curve, the directional signs, the warning signs, were not up when the person went down the road. They are up now. Does that limit or does that do anything for your liability? You'll find out in court. So,
Well,
so there's that point too, that it,
Right.
but again, the guardrail's in spring,
Right.
where it might be less, but $18,000 is, $8,000 for us, 10 from MnDOT, so.
Where it could be. Right, so just going back to the basic again, the question before us this evening is, do we go forward with a guardrail right now this winter, as soon as feasibly possible, or do we wait until, and do it once the frost is out of the ground? And technically, there is, till next fall to have the discussion. Is there anything else we want to have discussion about with it? So,
Tom, is there anything on a temporary status that could be done there to
Well, I guess
I don't.
in an ordinary winter, you'd have enough snow that the plow establishes a berm, and you would have to work to get over that. I mean, at 20 miles an hour, and it's only signed at 15, but assuming somebody is going faster than the posted speed, I'd be very surprised you could break through a typical berm from the snowplow there and still make it to the highway. I don't believe that's possible without some real effort. But this isn't a typical winter. I guess a road is as safe as you, the driver, feel it is. I'll say, for instance, when you go to the cities, everywhere you go, there's construction going on with Jersey barriers, and you're flying past them 70 miles an hour. This, I don't think, is anywhere near that kind of a situation. That's not to say that it doesn't have some. I just don't think it's that severe.
Do you feel that our salting, because we didn't salt when this happened.
The road was virgin at that point. We hadn't placed anything on it at that point.
That, I guess I just want to know, do you think that if we continue to salt, that it'll be reasonably safe? I mean, I realize we can't take.
I guess look at it this way, Ross. You can pick any section along 371 you want, and people go off the road all over. And sometimes they try to drive back onto the highway, sometimes they don't. And would you say, whether it's anywhere between here and back onto the highway after going off, is that a safe maneuver? And I don't think this is any different than that. You'll go off the road,
I mean, you
and
do
you'll
have
get
a hill
stuck
there.
somewhere between there and the ditch, most likely. In this case, because there was very little snow, she was able to drive through and get back on the highway.
Okay.
I would entertain a motion.
Hello.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bob. You gotta come up to the podium, though. I'm sorry, we gotta get you on tape.
Bob, come up to the microphone.
Yeah, Bob, I'm sorry, but it's protocol. We need to have you come up to the microphone. Maybe we'll keep.
As one possibility. The more we talk to people, people start saying, well, now you're going to damage your car and damage the rail, and somebody else suggested a barrier curb. That would work. If we can broaden that curb, but then, well, if it's going to take 10 years, that's going to be too long. Okay, you're going to have to do something with that curb. John, that's something might be able to be done sooner if, for example, Grandview doesn't do anything.
Right.
If Tom had mentioned putting in shrubs or something to mark the edge of the road, I don't care. Yeah, we would have to do something. But I don't want to give up on broadening the curb, I guess. So in with a guardrail, okay?
Well, actually, I think we're getting there. I think really what I'm hearing is there's a lot.
Yeah.
And the motion before us tonight is, do we do something with it? And it seems like they've been doing a good job. I mean, unless somebody says differently, I think they've been doing it in summer to put a guardrail in for a much lesser cost. I mean, that's really what's before us tonight. If we decide to go forward with the guardrail, you know, I have no idea if there'll be, you know, I couldn't predict at this moment whether there'll be any more discussion about changing a road. If we don't put a guardrail in, I couldn't say if there's going to be any more discussion up to the count to have that, you know, so understand that. But, you know, the way I see it is, it's about, do we do a guardrail now for a much higher price, or do we look to say, you know, it's not quite as big of an emergency as we thought it was, which then means we can do it before the next freeze cycle. Could be in April or May, and if there's any other discussion that we want to have during that time, we can have it. But to start, I mean, just, you know, to start adding a bunch of different things, this is just simply, do we do it now or do we wait? And that's kind of what I mean, that's what's before us. And
But
you know,
the survey went beyond that, okay?
Yeah.
The survey was built around, if we wait, what do we do? Okay.
Well, right, and that's where I
That's what I'm
say,
looking
if
for a
we,
commitment on.
and that's what I thought, and I hope I'm saying, and if I'm not, I'll say it, is to wait. Well, let me put it, let me back one second. If we were to do a guardrail now, I don't know how much further discussion there would be. Certainly there could be, but I can't predict that. If we wait, we don't spend any money right now, before we spend for maybe half price.
Yeah, I don't think the people that responded, you know, what was the number on that, Roger? The people that said, you know, wait and just put a guardrail
58%.
here, and that's the end of it.
Well, 24% wasn't done now.
Right.
58% want something done next spring.
Yeah.
3 options then.
Right, do we do it now, or do we wait? And
What I'm trying to say is, you know, when I looked at this thing, it was, I'll wait if we can broaden the curve, okay?
that wasn't the question, though. I mean, I don't mean to argue.
Well, we're talking about is option C.
Option C is zero in this winter.
Yeah.
It's the same, interest of doing it now and also, next spring, putting the, article, you know, doing the widening next spring. That's comparable.
Okay. So, council, we need to make a decision so we can move forward.
I'll move that we accept the bids from H&R Construction, $18,000, cost to be shared with the state of Minnesota.
58% don't want it right now, so I'm not comfortable spending.
Other discussion? So yes.
Yes.
No. Gary?
Nay.
Yes.
Motion to put the guardrail in this winter.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I really appreciate the time and the concern that you have, and you know, I support whatever you've done here. I think the citizens have also spoken, so again, thanks for your time and effort into our concern.
Roger?
Yes.
Can I just say one thing? When Wayne was up here, he said that you guys felt the council treated you as a second-rate road.
As a what?
As a second-rate citizens in the road. That hope that in fixing the hill, and now in trying to address this issue, that them sentiments have somewhat changed. As I guess I took kind of a little bit of offense when Wayne had referred to that. I
guess I didn't.
I just hope that the road feels like that, you know, we take you guys as just as serious as anyone. That's all I want to say.
And I believe that. I don't remember Wayne saying that. I can only speak for myself, and I certainly don't believe that we are treated as second-rate roads. We do have some concerns about the other issues.
Absolutely, but hopefully you found that all of us in the council have been supportive of you.
Absolutely, and that's why I'll make the comments.
so-
I appreciate the effort and the time you've spent and for our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you for doing this legwork, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very helpful.
To Bob's bureau as well, and if Wayne was involved, Wayne as well. Old business, if I'm on track, would be FC. Information from XL Energy regarding existing gas line along Edna Lake Road tabled from discussion in the December 13th council meeting. That was just information. And it was right, and that's not going to go anywhere right now. So we move on to F2. And Jenny, do you have anything else you wanted to say about C or XL Energy, or just good? Okay.
No.
So I'm double check. Number 2, under old business, discussion and vote on keeping or rescinding the city's current assessment policy, tabled from the October 18th, 2017 and November 15th, 2000. As I'm sure most are aware, there's been ongoing discussions and back and forth about whether the city's assessment policy is indeed what the citizens want, the best way to move forward with roads. What does that policy look like? Appreciative of it. When the assessment policy was first brought to the table, it was milling and resurfacing of streets. And whether that policy the city wanted to do. There's a lot more to it. I won't go into it. At that time, voted that we would do assessments. It came up again this year. There's different, as we've grown through this process, if you might say, we've learned that there is reason to have the 429 policy, which is the state's statute for assessing. Or the reasons that it could serve a good purpose for the city other than milling and resurfacing, if a person is thinking that direction, would be that if a street came along, Edna Lake Road came along, Church Street came along, Poplar came along, and said, we would really like to have curb and gutter, the whole street. We'd like to have added lighting. We'd like to have sidewalks, whatever that may be. Policy, the statute or the chapter that we would go to use to have discussions about how to assess citizens or how that might work. That is a reason, certainly, to have that on the books as a tool to use. And I like that word that came from Mr. Pearson. A tool that we would have in the toolbox to use to how we would assess. So that's the second piece. The first piece is, does the city believe it wants to assess residents for milling and resurfacing of their streets? The second part of that would be specialty assessments. We have had workshops, we've had discussions, we've had great discussions, we've had moderately heated discussions, and in the last few weeks, Councilman Ryan and Bob Bureau got together. Bob is quasi or one of two Public Works Committee people, got together, discussed this, and came up with some ideas for wording ideas to keep the 429 policy but clarify its intent as this council sees it used. During that same time, Councilman Johnson and I got together with the city attorney. We had a discussion and about the similar scenario. What I've learned since is what's come out of it is it seemed like both parties who talked pretty much had the same ideas as to how they felt they would like to see this go forward. So with that bit of history, I would open up and would be open to a motion or discussion as to what this current assessment policy would look like. Is it going to change? Are we going to get rid of it? Or do we maintain it and just keep the wording as it is? So with that, I'll open up for discussion or a motion.
Well, obviously, I'd like to have some discussion here. I guess I'm just going to run through the timeline here of how this came about. First of all, this wasn't born out of a budget crisis. This was born out of planning down the road of how we're going to pay for the roads. It was born out of a lot of money being spent on a park, things that I don't think we could afford, but obviously the park was an issue and that was put into a bond. That's cost us, this city, a lot of money, and that this city will pay dearly for the next 30 years. And it was also born out of looking at commercial and saying, is it fair, is it not fair? A committee was formed, and it was brought to the council. At the meeting that it was brought to, I had done all my research like I should. I had my reasons of why I was voting for it. The other council members there, I'm not going to get into the details, I was, but it's going to take way too long. But anyways, the reasons for it certainly weren't even, I don't know how you'd look at it from a logical point and go, yeah, I can change my mind based on that. So we did get approved. Part of the problems that people seem to have was that there was no public meetings on it, that we didn't look at all alternatives. We could lower the budget by 2%, and we could do a state sales tax, and that not everything was gone through. Fine. To my knowledge, there really hasn't been any public meetings on it. There was a private meeting, however, held that I accidentally ended up at, that I was told that I was an uninvited guest to a private meeting. I was at that meeting. The facts at that meeting were not accurate. And you have a gentleman who was at that meeting that's very familiar with this process that I believe, I've never asked him, you guys to ask him if the facts there were accurate. I've talked to people that was under the impression that the assessment would cost way more than it was, and I talked to one person that thought they were getting sewer. So if we want to talk about public opinion, and you want me, who I believe I've done my homework, to change my mind on public opinion, but we have private meetings. Why even have a private meeting? Why not a public meeting? It's a public issue. It affects all the residents. Where's your transparency in a private meeting? But enough said. And you have facts that, who knows what was said? I know Tom said that he's talked to people that thought that the assessment was going to be way more than it was too. So you want me to change my mind based on public facts, but yet we'll have one person or two people on here give out them facts. I'm not going to do it. Lowering the budget by 2%. That was something that the mayor brought up. The last 4 budget meetings that we've had, and I'm talking budget meetings, our first ones in August and early September, where we decide what the budget is, he's only attended 1. For this year that we're in now, our 2017 budget, he had no input into that budget, 0. The rest of the council members, we did the work, we put the budget together. So I ask you how you can lower a budget by 2% if you don't even show up to the budget meeting. State sales tax, haven't heard anything on it. So we go along, back and forth, whatever. At the end, we come and say, we reviewed everything, and our best option is to go ahead and pay for it, and we'll just borrow the money and make our minimum payment. We really don't even look at truly what this is going to cost down the road, which was hopefully part of the plan, or at least the plan that I was understanding of. We don't even factor in that interest rates now are cheap, they're going to go up. And we come back to the citizens of Nisswa and we say, yep, we've researched all this, and this is our best plan, is we borrow the money and meet our minimum payments just like the rest of the government does. I think there's better options out there. I think that assessments wasn't given a fair shake. And again, I stated at that meeting, everything that I believe in assessments, I haven't had someone come and tell me something that I go, okay. I mean, there's been a lot of stuff, the state statute, this, that. I guess I'm just disappointed in the way this went. This is politics here, and I guess I'm not a politician. That's why I'm getting really frustrated with being on council and really frustrated with things. But this was purely political. It was, and now we come to the decision and say, yep, we've researched this fully, and our best plan is to just borrow the money, and we'll meet our minimum payments just like the rest of America and the rest of big government. So that's all I'm going to say on the deal.
Thank you, Ross.
Don?
We currently have a public improvement and roadway assessment policy that has been adopted by the council. It's been around for about a year. And the changes that are being suggested really guts the whole policy. It drops out maintaining bituminous roads and streets. It drops maintaining gravel and sand roads. It drops non-maintained roads. It drops maintained bituminous rural section roads. It drops a lot of stuff. There's no. If we vote what's being proposed, a lot of this stuff goes away. The rest of the policy really isn't that apropos at that point. What we have is a 429 policy that can be instituted if the council and the public wants it. If we get a petition from people from the general public, it takes a 3/5 vote from this council to go ahead and do the project and assess. 3/5. If the council comes in and says, no, we're going to initiate the project, it takes a 4/5 vote. So basically, with the policy that we have, if you don't want to assess for a road, don't vote for it. You don't vote for it. And you can go back to the old way of doing it. You just go out and borrow the money and pay it back. That's the easy way to do it. I would suggest we keep what we have, and when the time comes to vote, that's when the decision is made. You either vote for a 429, or you vote no, and the 429 goes away for that project. It leaves your options open. We have a lot of things in here that even the attorney has said would be very nice. Other cities have it, and we can assess certain things, bike trails, special stuff at cul-de-sacs, lighting, a lot of different things that can be assessed if we keep the present policy. But I'm afraid that we're going to lose all of that if we vote for what's being proposed. So that's where I'm from. I think we should keep the policy.
The changes that were made, though, my understanding is that only the repaving, reclaiming, maintenance would not be assessed. Anything else could still be assessed.
I don't think so.
Well, okay. You know, my take on it is, and I kind of go back to certainly what one of our kind of founding fathers here in town said, and that is, this has always been a community that basically takes care of itself, and people have willingly shared the burden of all the repaving of the streets, and and feels that the policy is not necessary. And, a little over a year ago, my understanding was that we were at a crossroads with how we're going to pay for the road cycle, getting a road cycle established and how we were going to pay for it. Over the last year, I've seen and checked into a lot of this, and the city doesn't have any financial issue with repaving the roads. We're not in any burden. At worst, we maybe would have to add, I don't even know, $20,000 to $50,000 a year to the budget to make up for the amounts that would be assessed to the citizens. And, assessments are an interesting thing because it sounds like a way to save money, but it really doesn't save any money. The city bonds for 100% of the road repairs. The city's responsible for it. Citizens are the ones who pay all the taxes. And whether that 30, what if it's a 30% assessment, whether that 30% is shared by 100% of the people in addition to the 70% that they would already be carrying, and which has been the policy of Nisswa since its founding days. There is no outside money that comes in to help pay the assessment. 100% of the cost is paid by 100% of the people. It saves nobody any money. There's a time period, if there is assessments, there is a time period of maybe 7 to 10 years, depending on what the length of the bond is set for, that different people in town would be paying an assessment until that bond is paid off. And once that bond is paid off, then another area of town, streets in town, get repaved. And then that group of people pay an assessment for 7 to 10 years, depending on the length of the bond. And it continues on like that through the whole cycle until you get back to 40 years from now when we start redoing the streets that we'd be doing this year. 40 years from now, we'll start those again. If assessments, actually saved the city 30%, wow, I'd be all for that. But it actually doesn't save the city any money, because the city is the citizens, and the citizens pay 100% of the cost, whether you split it up, the pie up amongst 2,000 people, or you split it 70% to 2,000 people and 30% to the people on those roads that are being done. The negative side, potential negative to assessing, is if the city, or if the citizens don't petition the city to do a road, it doesn't get done. That's be step number one. Step number two is that the city council could look at that road and say it has to be done, or two of the members on council or three could say it has to be done, but it takes a 4/5 vote of council. So if that time a council was against assessments, they would say no, we don't get it's not a 4/5 vote, we won't pass it. So then we're not doing any roads. The assessment policy, in my mind, makes the whole road issue much more complicated than it really needs to be. If we keep assessing, so to speak, 100% of the cost to 100% of the citizens through the levy and the budget, we all just pay a fair share. And if there is somebody who lives along a road who's really struggling to be there, and the city comes along with assessment. I know in other nearby communities, people have been forced to sell their homes because they can't afford the assessment. They're barely hanging on the way it is. So to keep that, so just stay with the way we have been doing things for 80 years or 50 years, whatever it is, to me makes the most sense. And you don't have to get into what's fair, what's not fair. My road gets more use. Why am I paying? I live on a commercial street. Why do I have to pay for everybody when it's a thoroughfare for the town? And now I'm being assessed, but everybody uses my road, so to speak. It just gets into a quagmire that doesn't seem like it even has to happen.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, wait.
Oh, okay.
I waited. Consistency. If we keep the assessment policy for milling and repaving, we have a potential consistency problem. Well, we assess for this street for milling and repaving, but the next time the citizens don't want it, the council votes for it, doesn't vote for it, either the road doesn't get done, or when it gets done, or the mayor or the council says, we're not going to assess that street. Well, what's fair if one gets assessed and the other doesn't get assessed? So that creates a problem in my mind. And my last thought is, politics was brought up, and to me, I really don't see it as politics. I mean, I've heard from over 100 people who either don't want assessments or don't understand the need for assessments, and if there was a really good need, they might be for it or they might not. I've not, with the exception of 2 people, I've not heard of anybody in town saying, hey, I think we need to do assessments. So now, that's not a scientific study by any stretch, but it's a pretty powerful statement from what I know and what I'm aware of. It's basically over 100 to 2. So, and the 2 happen to be councilmen. I haven't found anybody and I respect their opinions. I really do. But I've not heard any citizens at all who are in favor of assessments. So that's what I have to say about it. Don?
I just respectfully would take issue with one thing that you said. I think we have to separate the project from the assessment vote. If we see that a road needs improvement and the citizens are for it, we can go ahead and do it. The 429 is only on the assessment portion. If you vote to not have a 429, you still do the road. You see the difference?
Right, true.
There's 2 separate parts. One, the road can go ahead and be paved. You're just voting on whether there be assessments on it or not. It doesn't mean that the roads are not going to get done. They will get done.
Right. But then you get into the consistency factor. This road was assessed. Well, we didn't get the votes on the next one, so they don't get assessed. It becomes a consistency thing.
Well,
at least in my humble.
Well, with the policy you have right now, you're still going to have the same problem.
Well, I don't feel. I mean, we can differ there. I understand.
Okay.
I guess I'd like to rebuttal a little bit. If anyone ever thinks that I thought the city would save 30% by doing assessments, that's ridiculous. Obviously, the full amount's going to get paid. The difference comes in revenue streams. What assessments, so let's just use numbers. If you have $1 million bond and you are getting $250,000 from assessments, that $250,000 comes from a different revenue. Now, we can get into all this, and I'm not, it does, and it's not the general levy that's paying it. The problem with the citizen, there's been no public meeting, so not everybody's gotten 100% of the correct information. I respect that, there's more than 2 people in the town that are for assessments, because I've talked to people about this a lot too. The problem is, and I'll be happy to talk with anybody, the problem is there's been virtually no information by people who really know about assessments in 429. I mean, I guess I've been over this so many times, it's, it's all about understanding you have a $7 million, $8 million liability, and how we're going to pay for it over the long term. Roads have not, I would like to see anywhere where it was a financial issue that put us into this. It was that nothing gets done with roads, there was no plan, it was all in long-term planning. There's a lot of cities that use assessments. So if assessments, I mean, almost all of our neighboring cities use assessments. It's a tool that cities can use. And there are benefits to it. The whole process did not go the way that it should. There's other ways of looking. It's all about just how we're going to pay for it. That's what this whole thing is about. And in the upfront, people said that not everything was looked into. Well, we still haven't looked into everything. We haven't looked at all the ways to pay this $8 million.
That's over 40 years.
I get that's over 40 years, but if you don't start planning for it now, how are you going to get there?
But we are, Ross. We are. John, anything? Or would you like to make a motion, or what are you thinking?
Well, to echo a little bit of what Ross is saying, the committee that looked at assessments from the last council and presented it did not look at everything. I read all the minutes from those committees. I had his off to Maggie, who does keep very good minutes. There was discussion at those meetings of nothing other than assessments. It was obvious when you read the minutes that that's where it was going to go. There was no published findings from the committee, hey, this is why we think this is the right way to go. When I ran, I talked to a lot of people. Some really had no opinion on the assessment policy. Others had very strong opinions on it. But pretty much without exception, none of them really understood it. That's a problem. Assessments. There's sales tax. Some cities have gone that road. We could do the status quo. We could work on finding alternatives, maybe suggesting new legislation or different ways. Or just because something hasn't been done before doesn't mean that the city of Nisswa or the citizens thereof can't come up with something new and try and get it through the legislature to help us fund roads and things. But in that respect, before you assess people for roads, you better have gone through all your alternatives and, in my opinion, given it out to the public, saying, here's what it looks like. So this is what an assessment actually does. This is what it looks like. This is what it's going to cost. This is what it's not going to do. This is what a sales tax would do, but, Katie bar the door, it's going to take several years to get it through the legislature. These are, if you want to pass, the change to the proposed assessment policy doesn't say roads aren't going to get done. It says it's not going to get assessed for general maintenance. In my opinion, if I come up and my neighbors come up and we say, I want a bike lane and all this lighting around my cul-de-sac for my kids in my neighborhood, which is beyond what our streets are designed to be, then we in my neighborhood can pay for 100% of it, have it assessed against us, because we want something special. But That's what the constituency that I'm hearing wants kept, okay? But they also admit if there are other ways around it. When I ran, I was of the understanding that, well, let's sit and look at all the different, and we might actually find out, truth be known, assessments is the best way to do it. We don't know. We don't think it is, but we don't know. So that's how I feel about it. There is a lot of bad information out there, and of course then people tend to exaggerate after that and try and say that, well, it was this, that, or whatever. But long and short, I think the 429 is actually a poorly written statute. I think it could use some major tweaking, but it's what it is. I'll tell everybody where I'm at with this right now, and I don't know how to form this into a motion, so keep track. I would like to keep the assessment policy with the changes that are made now, but at the same time, send this back to the Public Works Committee so that we can go through every single current, idea that's been out there, vet them, look at them, explain them, write it out, and get it out to the people in this community, and let you people decide what you want. Okay? From an educated standpoint. And, I have, Ross and I are on opposite ends of this one, and we are, but, in all honesty, I have to admit that I don't know that assessments aren't the most cost affordable way for us to do it, because I haven't seen all the information. But I have issues with 429 that go beyond just the idea of an assessment. I have issues with the way it's worded, and I have issues with the way it's used. But that's not here. I would like to keep the changes in the policy that Bob and I helped with, you and Gary and Tom put together, so it made legalese no sense, but probably as opposed to what we said. But I guess I would make the motion that we keep the policy with the proposed changes, and at the same time send this back to the Public Works Committee so that we can look at it in depth, get the information down from credible sources that everyone knows exactly how it is, and then we can get that information out to the public. That would be my motion.
I'll second that for discussion purposes. The one just tweak of a concern that I have, John, is I'm first of all, I'm all with you about this going to the Public Works Committee for exploration. I think that's the smart thing for us to do, because there may be ways that we can actually save the city money, and I think that every one of those avenues should be explored. Do I question, does it need to be part of this motion or not, or should it just automatically do that, or should it be a separate motion? That would be kind of my concern. But I certainly have no problem with it going back because I do believe, I totally agree that we should learn about all of the possibilities. Absolutely. I mean, that's smart governing, I believe.
We can make it a separate motion too.
But I'll just leave it up to you. I mean, you made the motion, I seconded. I mean, I'll support it either way, but having the two connected together maybe seems slightly awkward to me, but it may not be to anybody else.
Is it cleaner? Which way now? Jenny, somebody, which way is it cleaner?
What are the changes? Because Bob and John did the original revision, and then I redlined it, and
you made revisions.
I redlined your revision, so I don't know.
Yes. I think what John was referring to, and what we were just kind of discussing now about should it going back to the Public Works Committee for further discussion be part of this motion, or would it be better to be two separate motions?
Two separate. You don't want to if you're voting on what to do with this policy, then you don't want to present some contingency to that. If it goes to the other body and the other body makes some recommendations, those could come before you. Those could end up in a revised policy.
Then I will amend my motion to say that we should keep, I propose that we keep the assessment policy with the proposed changes, like it, as it stipulates in A, 2A, as it references the assessment policy.
Which means,
As it,
as it's written and presented to us tonight.
as it's, yes, as
Okay,
the
yeah.
proposed
Just want-
changes.
I thought that's what
Yes.
you meant, just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify.
Yeah.
I would second that motion.
I guess for discussion, if this truly does go back, at the end of the day, my main goal with this was to have this looked out over the 40 years, to come up with a plan of how this is going to be paid, and hopefully start, what my original thing was to start a fund that was just for roads that runs much like the sewer. Gets looked at every year periodically, makes adjustments to inflation, interest rates, and so that we're ensuring for the next 40 years for our citizens that we have the money to pay for the roads, that we're looking at it, we're on top of it. That hasn't been done at all. If, well, not that I've seen, not
I tend to agree
over.
with Gary, too.
Then where has it been done? Where is this layout of?
Okay, at this moment, I'm going to reel this back.
Yeah, absolutely. Just let me finish. I won't get off track.
It's a different discussion, and it's going backwards. You guys can have that discussion outside of the meeting if you want.
Why do we, all
Well,
whatever.
it's protocol.
They'll fund them all.
Any more new information? All those well, let's do a roll call vote. We'll go back to Don, start at Don's end again.
No.
Gary?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Aye. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a second motion that we take the current policy, send it back to the Public Works Commission, and we investigate fully and publicly all options that could possibly be on the table for us to fund roads and streets, including assessments. Okay? And that we bring that information back to the council, including to the public. A report, an actual report. The Public Works Committee would do it, and do we want to put a timeline on it? No. Okay. I would hope by fall. Okay.
I'm going to look to second that, but I would like a clarification. John, you said bring this new policy back to the Public Works.
To bring bring the policy to Public Works as it.
Right.
That I meant. Okay, we're going to bring the policy.
I think we're on. Here's my question for you.
Okay.
Let me ask the question clearly, then you'll know what I'm looking for. Is it really this policy that needs to go back to Public Works, or is it that Public Works should be requested to investigate all possible options, present a report at a later date? I mean, I'm just questioning, does it really tie into this policy, or is what you're looking to do, is it really investigating? And
I guess it really doesn't tie into it, but it is going to be a major part of it. Mm-hmm. So, where Jenny's supposed to come up with some really cool language and bail me out.
How about a motion that Public Works...
I'd make a motion that Public Works take on the task of addressing cost or funding for roads and streets, including assessments, and present a report back to the council with everything that's been looked at or every alternatives that we have for funding looked at to give the council and the public a true understanding of what other potential there is for funding, including assessments. If that, how do you, that's what I'm trying to get at.
I'll
Okay.
second that. I'll second that.
Having lost the first vote, the second vote, the only suggestion I could have to the motion is, I think it would be advantageous to have a date instead of kind of an ethereal, let's get it done in the fall. If it doesn't get done, who knows when it's going to get done. If you have a date that's supposed to be back down, helps people focus and get stuff done.
Reasonable question.
Yeah, and
So-
I would normally think have a drop dead date type thing in there, but I know there's various legislators that I want to get involved in it. I need information from them on certain things that have come up. I don't know what that schedule is going to look like. I would certainly think.
You could certainly provide a status report, say next September or whatever date, and if you're still working on.
After the session is over, before, you could even make it a year from now, maximum.
Because the session is short this year. I think,
Yeah.
correct? Short one, yeah.
It's just that if something doesn't have a deadline, it tends to,
Can we just go with
Creep.
the September status report at
Status report.
the September council meeting?
I'll second that motion.
I already did.
Oh, did you?
But if you would like it, you can have it.
No, I don't care.
Yeah, one other thing for discussion before we vote is input from the council members, what you guys are thinking. It's going to be imperative that it gets to Tom, Jenny, and whatnot, so we can have everyone's input when we sit and look at this thing, so that we're not missing something. Like 40 years down the road, if there was a way to actually say, wow, we're 100% funded for the rest of our eternity. Great. Don't think it's going to happen, but just saying.
Okay, so let's do a roll call vote again. Let's start with John Ryan this time.
Aye.
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 yep.
Yeah, okay. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. All right, proposed changes. So does that satisfy everybody on number 2, proposed changes to public improvements and roadway assessment policies and procedures?
No, but we voted on it.
Can I say something to the crowd?
If you would like to.
Bob, you've named your poison.
Okay, we will move to council reports. Mayor's council report. Two things, I guess. Both, well, one's, I think, pretty major, or not major, but nice. You know, I've been working with Jenny a fair bit on different things, and I just wanted to say that, you know, and that is part of my liaison role. I'd just like to share how impressed I am with her abilities, and it's like, my gosh, she leaves me in the dust, and that maybe doesn't take an awful lot, but I mean, she really leaves me in the dust. So, thank you there. I wanted to address the liaison positions for next year. I'll just say it right at this point in time, unless somebody brings up an issue. I'm just thinking that to leave liaison positions as they have been this last year, and having heard people's different viewpoints about what works and what doesn't work for them, it seems like this has been pretty smooth this year, and it's been going well, so I'm just not anticipating anything there unless council members come to me and say something. Lastly, there was, and I shared this with Don before the meeting. Don actually brought it up. It did come up one other time. And he was a little bit joking about it, but we were both here when all of these council packets were laid out all across the counter in the printing area. And Don was like, wow, this is a lot of paper. He was like, if you make a motion to get tablets, I'd sure second that. And so it got me thinking. And so I talked with Jenny about it, and I just asked her, I said, do you have any idea what it costs us to print out all this paper and use all this paper every year? And she put together facts and figures for us, and it costs us an amazingly small amount. It's $75 a year is what all this council paper costs us.
But she's prejudiced. She likes paper.
I don't know that. She didn't say that, but she might be. So, for $75 a year, and the fact that I know I recycle all my paper. When I look at it, we get it electronically, kind of early on, we can peel it there. And then the nice thing I think about the paper is sometimes I can be reading on one page, and it's like there's something on another page, and I can look at two pages at the same time, which sometimes is helpful. So, because by the time I go back 50 pages or 5 pages and find it, I forgot what I was looking for, and that's one of my shortcomings. So, so just an update that our paper for the meetings costs us $75 a year. That's all I have. Don, you want to start with reports, and we'll move across?
Well, over the course of the year, some of us have had negative feelings about each other, about certain issues when they came up back and forth. Sometimes we don't think the same, and we were pretty vocal about that back and forth, but at this time of the year, I want to say to everybody here, Merry Christmas, not Happy Holidays, Merry Christmas.
Merry
I agree.
Christmas. Yep. Thank you, Don.
Well said.
Thank you.
Ditto from me. That's all I got.
Okay. I've already spoken. Ross?
I'll ditto the same.
Okay. John, anything?
Ditto the same, and I want to mention that I want to thank Tom. There was a citizen here in the city, and I'm not sure how all that is worked out and stuff, so I'm not going to name names, but Tom was working with that party on the road project that also had to do with, they ended up in an arbitration with their realtor. Tom testified for them at their arbitration hearing. They called me and said they were extremely grateful that you did that, and they have been very, very happy with the response from Tom at the Public Works Department and the city with their plight to date. So thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
Yep, that's always very nice. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? Sorry.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Ross, have her call.
Second. All those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye.